Hello, my name is Alex Isles and welcome to Bamburgh Castle. In this video we're going to look at what would have Anglo Saxon Bamburgh look like, and I'm going to take you through some of the locations and talk to you about the structure of Bamburgh as a capital city and a fortress during the Anglo Saxon period. So directly ahead of me we have what is called the St Oswald's Gate, and just coming down here you can see the steps leading long winding set of steps that goes down through here and takes you down onto what is now a green at the bottom of Bamburgh Castle. This would have been the Anglo-Saxon entrance to Bamburgh. So as today you enter through a gatehouse at the other side of Bamburgh, in the Anglo-Saxon period this would have been your entrance coming up these steps carved through the rock. These have obviously steps have been replaced in the 17th century, but coming up through these steps and entering into Bamburgh Castle, or into the fortress that is now Bamburgh Castle. Just up here you can see a modern day windmill, but in the past that's the location where there would have been a tower standing and giving watch over the entrance to Bamburgh. This tower meant that anyone who was coming towards Bamburgh would have been seen from a great distance and provided a huge amount of defence as well for this ancient fortress, because they would be able to throw both javelins and spears down on any attacker, but also be able to see anything coming in from the sea as well. And as you're coming up here, you've only got 1.5 meters, maybe a metre wide entrance taking you into Bamburgh itself. So it means any attackers are going to come through narrowly and not in great numbers, meaning that Bamburgh is very easily fortified and defended against any assault. Alongside this as well, a very important factor to mention about Bamburgh in the Anglo-Saxon period is the fact that if we come over here, today we can see the North Sea in the distance, and you can see the tides coming in and the impressive waves coming off. And just below Bamburgh Castle as well, you can see the sand dunes. In the Anglo-Saxon period, that wasn't there. Instead, the sea would have come right up to the base of the cliff face below the castle. All of this sand has come in since then and built up to basically provide the slope that you see coming down from the castle to the sea today. So because of that, you would have had the water right at the base of the castle, meaning you have the fence coming out this way to the sea. And that means that Bamburgh is only able to be assaulted from the landward side, further to the west, whereas the east is going to be fully into the sea and allows for supply as ships are coming in to Bamburgh Castle from that direction as well. Coming up this way, we're going to come into what would have been the industrial zone of Bamburgh Castle. There would have been over 100 structures in this area, and as archaeology has been done in this area, they've discovered that there was a large blacksmith's, a copper and bronze working site, and alongside that as well, a likely mint on that location. So there was a great deal of things being produced here at Bamburgh to support the royal craftspeople. Why not we actually tune in now to hear the local living historian Dave telling us about Bamburgh during the Dark Ages. Hello, my name is Alex Isles and welcome to Bamburgh Castle, and right now I'm standing in what is an Anglo-Saxon village, or a reconstruction of an Anglo-Saxon village, right here at Bamburgh Castle. And I've got Dave here as well, who is a resident living historian at Bamburgh Castle, and I'm just going to ask him questions about what Bamburgh Castle looked like during the Dark Ages. So welcome Dave, it's nice to meet you.
Nice to see you.
Yeah.
Dark Ages, well that's an odd term.
Yes.
It used to be extended from the time of the Romans leaving right into the Tudors. Current means of thinking that it's purely the 410 to 650 AD period. But we are more concerned here with the period 650 through to through the building of the castle in the Norman times. Now, there was very few stone buildings or any stonework about at the time. The walls that you see here in the West Ward, they would have been a wooden palisade leading down to the gateway of what is known as Oswald's Gate, a very defensible entranceway, and the main entranceway to the King's Palace, which would be where the existing keep is now, along with the well, the Anglo Saxon well, and a stone-built church. So that there was a church, gatehouses, and fortifications that were the stone. The rest of it was wooden palisade work. Here in the West Ward, we believe there was just over 100 structures. Small, probably one story, wooden construction with wood shingle roof or thatch. The thatch would be probably made with heather or even turf. But I've tried to recreate some of the buildings that have been found down in the archaeological dig and the Bamburgh Research Project here on site. So we have a forge, a mint. We know there was a mint here striking coins, certainly in the time of Earl Henry of Northumberland, the son of King David of Scotland. But it's almost certainly there was a mint here in the Saxon period from the 690s through to about 850s, 860s.
And we know that because they've discovered about 77 silver Anglo-Saxon coins in last year.
And a lot of copper coins.
A lot of copper, yeah.
The silver skeets and the copper stikers. The silver skeet develops into a copper stiker at the time of King Eanred of Northumberland, who also is the only Northumbrian monarch to strike a silver penny, of which only one is known. Eanred was the first and only Northumbrian monarch to strike a silver penny, which was possibly an attempt to bring in line Northumbria with the rest of the Anglo Saxon kingdoms, which were all striking pennies at this stage. But it also marks the demise of the silver skeet and the rise of the copper stiker, which was about a 20th of a penny. And those have been found on site in great numbers, and alongside a very large forge building that would have abutted the mint. We know this is an important building. It had a stone cobbled floor, which suggests very heavy usage.
Yes.
And all that was found just behind us, down in the archaeological pit.
You also mentioned a lot of buildings around here. How many of those do you think were people's habitation, and what do you reckon the population of Bamburgh would have been in Anglo-Saxon times?
Any village needs a core of about 80 or 90 people just to survive, for fetching water, for cutting firewood, for tending crops. It needs a large number of people to maintain a village. A royal palace would have had hundreds of people here. Now, we reckon that 100 of these structures here would have almost all have been work structures, work shelters, hovels, bothies for doing tanning, possibly tanning, although it would have been a bit smelly, but certainly leatherworking, silversmithing, goldsmithing, coppersmithing, blacksmithing. A farrier would be shoeing horses in later times. There was wheelwrights, shipwrights, bodgers, carpenters, joiners, cabinet makers. Everything that was needed was happening here. We even found where the butchery department was and where the animals were slaughtered.
So we're looking at a major industrial site in the Kingdom of Northumbria.
This was the industrial park of the Castle Mound. Over to our left was what is now the stable walls, would have been a wooden palisade leading from a gatehouse approximately the same position as the existing entrance to the next level up, just behind me over there.
Yeah.
That would have also been a stone-built building, but probably on the level it is now, with steps going up to it. The ground level we're on is much higher than it was in pre-Norman times. To get to the 1066 levels, we'd probably have to go down about 6 to 8 foot from here. It's all infill from sand that has come in after the castle walls have been built, which traps the air being blown into the mound and so it vortexes in the area and the sand is deposited. So we have a very sandy soil, but a very high infill since the walls were built. Very little increase in height from 600 AD through to 1066, but then after the castle's built in the Norman times, it starts to fill up with sand.
Gotcha. So basically what we're seeing here is a very different sort of palace area than would have been seen during the Anglo Saxon period.
I think the way to imagine this site would be to actually refer to a Peter Jackson film, the Lord of the Rings trilogy.
Yes.
And in the second part of the trilogy, you would see the Riders of Rohan with the King Theoden at his palace at Edoras, with a massive wooden palace on top of a hill surrounded by dwellings running all the way down the hill and the road going up to the palace. It's almost as if that would have been inspired by what this place would have looked like.
Yeah, I've often thought that when I've watched the film, that there is the similarity between like the way that Tolkien designed the Riders of Rohan and the Anglo-Saxon
scholar.
Yeah.
So he was heavily influenced by Anglo-Saxon Viking designs, the use of the runic for the dwarves, all of which were taken from from the Anglo-Saxon and Viking times. The structures we have here are based on archaeological finds. The tent just behind you is a copy of the tent that was found, or one of the 3 tents that was found in the Useberg burial. That's the middle-sized tent. There was a bigger one that was roughly 18 foot to the ridgepole, 20 foot long, and almost a hall in a tent.
Yeah.
But that one is copied directly from the original, and as best as I can, I've duplicated the colours that were used on it from the pigment resident, the remains of the pigments that are on the boards, which are now in the Historische Museum in Oslo, which I have been and seen and examined up close to look, to get it right.
Gotcha.
And those type of tents will be then used to create a roof structure for a permanent Gruben house by raising it up on a curtain wall of about 18 inch. You gain an extra 24 foot of floor space on a 12 foot long tent, a foot each side that you gain, that you can put your furniture without having to pull it away from the walls, because it will now go to the edge of the walls, and it makes it a much higher roof space. It gives you a feeling of comfort, and it's not claustrophobic in there.
Gotcha.
The canvas would have been replaced with thatch, with shingle, with turf, heather, any means that will shed the water. Wooden fronted doors, no windows, no chimneys, no smoke holes. The smoke that was needed would go out through the thatch or through the gaps in the shingle. It would have a void dug under the floor. Where the floor level is, they would dig it out, roughly a couple of feet to 3 foot deep, plank over the void, and that became your floor.
And that's the kind of housing that would have been here at Bamburgh.
It's the type of housing that was used throughout Europe, as far as we know, certainly from 600 AD right the way through into the Norman conquest and beyond. They would still be around in some form in the early 1200s. It was such a practical design.
Class.
Roughly 8 foot wide, 12 foot long. You can build them very close to each other, so you've got a street of houses, and from that our existing city street plans are built up.
Yeah.
You look at places like York, you can see the original street plans and where the buildings would have been, looking at the very old maps, and those streets do not alter to any great degree. There was at least one road on this area coming up from Oswald's Gate a trackway. It was probably had its own transport system here, because you can't get a cart through Oswald's Gate. It's only 3 foot wide. You might be able to get a hand barrow through, but it'd be up steps and difficult. So in all probability, goods would be handballed through the gateway onto a cart, carted up to or carted by hand up to the next gatehouse, which would you then have to access by probably steps going up to the gatehouse. All of that would be now under the soil, under the backfill, to the next level, which was the living accommodation, where all the dwellings were for the church, the clergy, the master workers, probably some of the wealthier tradesmen. A lot of people would have lived outside the castle mound, tending the crops in and around. There would be your fields over the castle, over what is now the castle walls, looking to the cricket pitch. All that would have been green fields, would have been cropped and producing crops for the large contingent of people that was stored here, who was living here.
Yeah, that's fascinating. So that really helps to set the scene for what Bamburgh would have looked like during the Dark Ages.
Yes.
And I really appreciate your time, and thank you so much again. So as you've just heard from Dave, as we exit through the Neville Tower here and enter into the main castle location here, you really get a sense of how large Bamburgh was as a Dark Age or early medieval fortress. Hundreds of people would have lived within its walls just to keep the castle and the fortress here, alive on a daily basis. You would need all of those people just to maintain the day-to-day food supplies. You'd have cooks, you'd have craftspeople of high and low status, and alongside that as well, you'd also have the people of Bamburgh who would live here. You'd need accommodation for the king's personal retinue, his bodyguard, and the Anglo Saxon thanes who would be brought from all over to serve the king and fight for him at times of war. Alongside this as well, as we come up through this part of the modern day castle, directly ahead of me we have the keep, and just next to the keep would have been a well. And we know from the writings of Simeon of Durham, they actually carved a well through solid rock right the way down through the windstone that was here at Bamburgh to actually supply water to this castle, to the fortress in the Dark Ages, and obviously to the later castle. So there would have been a huge amount of people here just to do that sort of labour, just to allow to supply water to the fortress. Alongside that as well, as we come up through here, there would have been the King's Hall, this grand feasting hall, very similar to as how Dave suggested to the hall that you see in Lord of the Rings in the Two Towers, with the fantastic massive hall of the Rohirrim, or the Riders of Rohan. And when you've got that massive hall there, that's where the kings of Northumbria would have gathered. And as they gathered, they would have feasted and ate and hold court over their people here in the northeast of England. We also have the Church of St. Peter, and that would have been an important location as well, especially later on, as it housed the relics of St. Oswald after his death. So you've got a lot of different things going on here at Bamburgh as this medieval fortress, not only just as a capital city, but also as a place of industry, of construction, and alongside that as well, as a place of worship. I really hope you've enjoyed today's video and you've been able to learn something about this fantastic medieval fortress in the northeast of England. You'll join us for another video in the future, and please don't forget to share with your friends, to subscribe, and also to like the video. If you want to, please put a comment in the sections below and ask some questions that I can answer about the Kingdom of Northumbria. Until then, stay safe and well, and I look forward to seeing you in a future video.